Welcome to Career Bits, the podcast of the University Career Center at UNC Charlotte. I'm Jay.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Patrick.
And this is episode 50 of Career Bits. I cannot believe we've gotten all the way to the golden
50.
anniversary, as it were.
Woo-hoo!
So we're titling this episode Golden Nuggets, using class projects for your own career development. And really what I wanted to do was to bring the gang back here and talk about how all those groups that you're in and all those projects you've been working on in your coursework are actually great prep for the quote real world. So Patrick, I want to start with you on that. First bit of that, why is it so important? How do those things relate to actual real internships, real jobs, that stuff you're doing in class or with your student work?
Yeah, I would say the way you look at classwork, right? We always think that faculty are making us do stuff so that they can have something to grade to give us an A or a B or whatever it might be. If the faculty is good, what they're doing is they're designing the work to actually allow you to practice the things that you might be doing out there. It may not be X for X. It could be I'm practicing leadership skills. I'm practicing project management, or I'm practicing literally doing some data analysis that I might be doing in Truist or another company that might be out there. So that's what the idea of projects are, and how students really should be thinking about their homework and the class work. It should not be a pain. It should be you better remember this stuff because you're going to be doing it in quote the real world.
Now that's a great point for the classwork stuff. Jesse, throwing it to you for the student org side. How about, I'm a leader in my student org. How can I design projects that are going to give us those skills, those competencies that we need going forward? What's a good strategy for that?
Throwing it, I'm catching it. And yes, absolutely. I mean, student orgs involvement, leadership roles especially, I think are looked on really favorably by employers. So it's a great way to talk through, again, those kind of transferable skill sets, those competencies that we have talked about a lot on this podcast. So thinking through communication skills, teamwork, problem solving, anything that you might encounter, when you're working with a group, when you're working with other people, that's great content to talk through some of those skills that you've built from your student org experiences. And so I'm thinking about, talking through these conversations that you've had, different challenging, problems that you might have encountered as a group, figuring out a project or an event, how to, for example, using this past year, how to get people to even participate virtually, through the pandemic. That's a huge problem that I think a lot of student orgs have probably discussed, as we've all switched to the virtual life. But those are great little tidbits and star examples that you can utilize in an interview with an employer. So
and gold nugget examples too, right, Jesse?
Golden nugget examples.
Yes.
You're absolutely right, Patrick. Yeah.
So Matthew, I toss it over to you next because you talk to employers like 3 times as much as all 3 of us do combined and stuff. What are you hearing from them in terms of what impresses them about the group project stuff that people show on their resumes and talk about in their interviews?
Yeah, so it really comes back to this whole idea, and it's funny. I actually just talked about group communication with some students this week. What employers are looking for and what they're looking for around group types of things is your leadership, what roles you take in a group, right? So some people might play the devil's advocate, some people might be the leaders, some people might be the ones who keep track of everything. Others could be something as simple as the one who keeps the mood light and fun, right? So we all kind of take these different areas. And so an employer wants to know, what strategies do you normally take on, right? What are your roles that you take on in a group, in a project? And so letting employers know that there's no real wrong answer unless it's I didn't do anything. Now that's a wrong answer. But if you do I help this way, or I help with communication, or I help make sure that our leader and everyone else understands what's going on, that demonstrates those skill sets about you and what you do in a particular project. And that's really important because employers want to know those things so they know how well you're going to work on another team, but also for yourself. It helps you be more aware of where do you succeed the most, right? So, something we take here in that you can learn more about here in the Career Center is Clifton Strengths. And so the Clifton Strengths really looks at the strengths that you have, and those strengths come out so well in group communication and projects. So definitely make sure you rely on those strengths. Don't try to fit yourself into a box that maybe is not one of your strengths in a project, but really know yourself, know what you can offer, and being able to tell an employer about that and how you helped a project come to fruition is money, my friends. So make sure you make note of that.
Matt, can I highlight something you said? You said that, employers love group work, right? And I think one of the biggest things students need to remember is that when you're on a group and you're trying to describe that group project on a resume or an interview, you need to talk about what the group project was. But like you said, describe what you did in the group, because we've all been part of those teams, student teams and real life teams, right, guys? Where, you have this group and you have that one person who's just not doing anything. And for some reason, they get the same grade as you, and yet you did all the work. And so you want to make sure to distinguish what you did versus others.
And that's why I tell students all the time, I'm like, no one gets super excited over group projects, right? Like, it's just a thing. Like, we've all taught students, and it's always an audible, like, when we say we're giving them a group project. And I always tell students, like, one thing that you can even do to
Sorry, Matt, what was that noise again? Okay. Yes, I recognize it. Okay, I'm fine.
One thing that they can be sure to recognize is you in that moment, you have so much power and ability to demonstrate your leadership. If you are in that moment being like, I'm not going to groan and moan about it, I'm going to be the leader of this group, or I'm going to be the one who sets the tone for this group, that makes it a really great project. Because in the end, what you're again doing is you're demonstrating your value and what you do as a professional and as a person. So I think that's one thing to remember. Don't get caught up in the negativity of like, oh, this might happen, that might happen with a group project. Get excited about what you can contribute, right? Get excited about how you can even help coach someone else on something. Those are going to be some great answers to some STAR method questions like Jesse was talking about.
Absolutely. And let my horns come out here and I'll play devil's advocate for a second. There's also a time to be able to talk about when group projects didn't go well and what you learned from that experience. I like to call the STAR method. I've added something to it. I like to call it the STAR L method, because you should talk about the situation, the task, the action, the result, and what you learned. And you really put that L one in when an employer asks you a question like, tell me about a time you had to work on something with a group and it totally went wrong. What did you do to fix it? And what you want to not do is talk about, well, Patrick was a lazy bum and Jesse never showed up and Matthew was always hung over, so nothing ever really got done. I had to do all of the work in this group. While those might have been true things to say, and that's not true of our group here, but let's say if those things were true, it's not really the best answer because it looks like you're complaining. What you do want to talk about is, we started out with a pretty good goal, but we got off track because we forgot a couple of things, or we got a little off track because our communication didn't work out and ended up not going as well as we wanted to. But what I learned from that is, maybe it's good if we sit down and I'm the person that can kind of put together the overall outline of what we need and make sure that we stay on track in the meetings, or I make sure that the leader is keeping us on track and moving things forward depending on what role I play. Talk about what you learned in that. So I say all of that, and I want to kind of throw it open to the group here about other ways that you can take not so positive experiences and spin them into positive outcomes for yourself as a job seeker, intern seeker, learner going forward.
I think what Matt said, like, even if you hate working on groups, well, then to not look for jobs where you might be working on groups all the time. I mean, you're learning what you don't like, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's a good like, trajectory to being like, probably not the best profession for me, right? Maybe something a little more like individualized is more what you're looking for.
At home by yourself.
Right? I mean, what's up? I will say something that I found really interesting, and I don't know if y'all have heard this before. Students will be like, well, I have never had the opportunity to do a project. I've never had a project in class. Maybe some majors, it's not as common, right? So in our engineering, computer science, they have a lot more time. Those classes tend to focus a lot more on those projects, right? Just based on their industry. Something that I will say to anyone listening, you have no excuse not to have a project, because prime example, we were doing a gaming panel and all these students were like, we don't know how to get experience. We want experience. We don't have projects. And it was a room of like an English student, comm student, game design, art. And so it was all these students from all these backgrounds. And the employer that was in there was like, well, you have all of these talents. Why aren't you all getting together and creating your own project? Why aren't you all putting your talents together? So if you want to create a game, or you are looking to do a book, or you're looking to do something, find other people. You are at a college campus with people who are literally studying these things every day. Utilize your network. Utilize that by going on LinkedIn and finding people. Go to the department and ask if you can be connected with other people. That hustle, my friends, will serve you so well.
And I'm going to jump in there, Matt, and say, hey students, hey employers, if you're listening to this right now, next year, there's going to be some really cool things coming to the Career Center near you called Project Promise. We get the opportunity to, like Matt said, to get your project-based learning through the Career Center if you need to. So that's all I'm going to say, right, Jay? That's all we got to say at this point. Just be ready.
To dovetail on what Matt's saying, build your own monster squad. If I used to joke with students all the time about getting involved on campus and like not getting over involved. It's like, look at the 300 student organizations. And if you don't see the one you want, it's not really hard to create one. That's why we have 300. Create your own. I literally knew a group of students once that created the open air Frisbee club because there wasn't one and they wanted to have one. And they actually got a seat in the SGA eventually before it was all said and done because they had so many members and from all across campus. They were one of the most interdisciplinary groups on that campus. So
all right, underwater basket weaving. Come on, guys, let's do this.
Really.
I want to also throw out there, I think a conversation I have all the time with students in coaching appointments is, okay, Jesse, I'm going to graduate here in 6 months. Next year, I wasn't able to get an internship. I screwed. And honestly, I say absolutely not, because again, you can hone in on those, again, course projects. It doesn't even have to be a class project. It can be, an individualized project as well. So know that it's not just those team specific projects that you can talk about in an interview setting or on your resume specifically. But I want to throw that out there for those of you who are concerned that you didn't have the opportunity or whatever, the internship didn't work out. You haven't been able to get a part-time job. You quote unquote don't have any experience. You have a ton of experience. That's why you have to tap into that course project work, academic coursework, et cetera, and really think through, okay, what are some of those skill sets, those core competencies that employers want to see that you can talk through, again, professionally on your resume, also in that interview, to highlight the fact that you're not missing anything. You have plenty of skills to share. It's just that your experiences might look different than your neighbor's experience.
Absolutely. Look, real quick, y'all, experience is anything you've done that builds your skill set, you can track progress of, and there was somebody there watching you to make sure you were doing it right. If those three things were happening, whatever that situation was, that is experience you can put on a resume, talk about in an interview, put on a cover letter, should be all over your LinkedIn page. That's experience. So keep those things in mind.
Okay, I don't know about y'all. So for people who don't do resumes and career stuff every day of their life, one of my most favorite things to do is when I get a student who's like, oh, I have no experience, and they're just working on their resume and everything. And then I love just having that conversation of tell me what you've done, tell me what classes you've taken. That class, I know that they do a project in that class. Tell me about that. Or oh, you were a babysitter or worked as in retail. Because then as career people, we can just pull so much stuff that's transferable skills. So I can guarantee you, if you come to the Career Center, you will have a resume where you'll walk out and be like, holy moly. I have a resume that is actually telling people what I do, talking about transferable skills, looks good. So definitely come to the Career Center. We are here to help you, my friends.
Indeed. You can make appointments through HireNiner. You can come to drop-ins, all that stuff on our website that we'll mention here in just a bit to make sure. I want to leave you with one final thought too. As you're thinking about all the stuff that you've been involved in or whatever, don't ask yourself, what did I do? Ask yourself, what did I accomplish? What did I achieve? If you frame things in that way, you're going to hone in on the very best of the stuff that you've done, and you're going to put it in a language format way that employers are going to respond to, people are going to react to, and it'll open up conversation. That's the whole point of all those documents, is just to get somebody to talk to you. And that's what you want to do. It's just a snippet of the story to get you to watch the whole thing. It's the Netflix commercial. Well, maybe it's not as bad as those, but it's the description that makes you want to click on it and hit play and go forward. That's what your resume, your cover letter, all that stuff is. Well, we're out of time here on the episode 50 of Career Bits, but want to thank everybody for joining us as well. Whether you're watching on YouTube, you're listening to us on one of the podcast platforms, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when the next video is coming up. And if you're on one of the podcast apps, and if you're listening to us particularly on Apple, leave us a 5-star review. Helps other people find the show. Can keep up with the happenings of the Career Center at career.uncc.edu, or follow the social media of the Career Center at Niner Careers. So for Patrick, for Matthew, for Jesse, I'm Jay. We'll talk to you again soon.